And we are live. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Stokastic Fantasy Football Channel. We are talking running backs today. It's Tuesday. So, nope, wrong day. It's Wednesday. It's waiver wire day. And it's nearly the start of week 2. This stream has started perfectly already. Nick Lepri, you know him at Notorious FNTSY. He's in the building. What's up, man? How are you, Nick?
I'm doing pretty good on this fine Wednesday. It's not actually Tuesday. This man is lost.
Obviously.
It's not actually Tuesday, but it is what it is. We're very excited to have a great day today. Ron's got his coffee and his bagel ready, so we're just going to have an excellent experience today talking about the running backs.
It is going to be an excellent experience today, but I'll be honest, as that 1 minute timer went down, I grabbed my coffee to get a drink from it, and I realized it's a lot lower than I want it to be at the start of this show. I mean, we'll make it through. It's only Wednesday, but Ron, you got your coffee and your bagel. Let us know how you take your bagel. Is it just cream cheese? Is it butter? Is it plain? You add any extra accoutrement, if you will. I live in New York, so you know that people take their bagels very, very seriously. And Just Bob says in the chat, I hit the thumbs up on the way in. Did you? I think that's a great way of putting it. And I think it really helps us out, guys. It helps those YouTube algorithms understand what we're all about. And what we are all about is helping you guys win each and every fantasy matchup you have going on. Great to see you guys hanging out today. We see some familiar faces. We see some new faces as well. Some questions already starting to pour in. Really appreciate it. We're going to go tier by tier, and we always spend a little time up at the top, like tier 1 or S tier, whatever the gamers call it. But we're all starting Jonathan Taylor. We're still starting Christian McCaffrey, but there are some new names at the top ends of the top tiers that I want to get into before I get into these questions. You ready to dig in, man?
Of course. I was born ready for this,
I was born for. Yeah,
born.
and I don't even know if I said my name. I'm Matt Savoca. You can follow me at Draftaholic on the Twitters if you so choose. Let's throw that tier 1 onto the board. Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, mentioned him, but welcome Saquon Barkley to tier 1. Welcome Javonte Williams to tier 1. These are based on the first run of the Stokastic projections and rankings, the same ones that power our DFS tools over on Stokastic.com. What do you think of the fact that we've added Saquon and Javonte to this group?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if our projections are based off of point per fumble leagues because I don't think Javonte Williams should be up here. What a joke that was, Javonte Williams. I'm only kidding though. Obviously, I like Javonte Williams a ton. It was more of a joke, but yeah, Javonte Williams is clearly in a good spot. It's pretty clear that the team wants to give him the ball, but I do feel like we are in for a couple of weeks from now, just a game where Melvin Gordon scores like 3 touchdowns. I just feel like that is imminent at this point because the team still gives Melvin Gordon a decent amount of looks. Again, Javonte is still the guy, so I'm going to continue to bang the drum for Javonte, but there are going to be games where you're very mad at because of Melvin Gordon.
100%. And there are going to be games where they throw to players that are not tight ends or running backs in Denver? Question mark?
Yeah, shocking.
Hopefully. I mean, Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy looked electric with the ball in their hands. So maybe, I don't know, get the ball to them. You know, I have Javonte in plenty of leagues, so I'm happy in those situations. But I think there is some natural variance that you hit on, not just with Melvin Gordon, but with that offense as a whole. Melvin Gordon, by the way, guys, in PFF's expected fantasy points, that's just rushing opportunities where you got them on the field, because if they're closer to the goal line, you get more expected fantasy points. Targets, air yards, things like that, all rolled up into one metric. Melvin Gordon was 11th among all running backs, while Javonte Williams was 4th. They're not going to both be top 12 all year. At least I don't think. Still, Javonte Williams looked great in his usage. I'm excited for it. I think he belongs right at the cusp of this S tier versus A tier, tier 1 versus tier 2. No?
Yeah, I agree. And then you talked about Saquon Barkley as well. I mean, it just seems like the team is running it back to 3 years ago where they just hand the ball to him every single play. He was moving like he was back in 2018 or 19, whenever he had those great seasons. Again, I don't remember exactly what years he was banged up, but Saquon Barkley does legitimately look good. And it seems like Brian Daboll is at least doing something right because the whole team seemed to be very fired up when they won. Saquon seemed to be like crying on the sideline. He was like, holy shit, we finally won a game. What is this? Like, I haven't felt this in years. And then we saw Daboll doing the dance in the locker room, like the Tar Heels coach. Remember when the Tar Heels won, and he's like, "Yeah!" That's what they were doing in the. It was
Yeah.
amazing. So I love Saquon.
I was thinking about this too. I wonder if coaching and coaching really matters actually in the mid tiers of the NFL because parity is so high. The differences between two teams in terms of talent and ability is so low. It really comes down to these high quality coaches, players who want to play for those coaches. It actually matters in the mid to lower tiers a little bit more than the upper tiers where they just have a little bit talent advantage over the
Yeah.
others. Players like playing for Dan Campbell, and we talk about it all the time. Doesn't mean that the Detroit Lions are going to be winning way more games suddenly, but they are in more games. They stay committed to playing stronger in more games, and it looks like the Giants might be on that same path. That is not very statistical for my typical statistical basis. Before we go to tier two, I think we can get that onto the board. I am going to throw a couple of these questions onto the board. Joey Santiago, what's up, man? Great to see you. He says, great work. I need advice. Cannot decide on an RB2. You got Zeke Elliott, Miles Sanders, Damian Pierce, and Michael Carter. I think you are flexing Gabe Davis, as you said. Do you have a gut reaction on who you're taking from that group of running backs?
Yeah, for me, I'd go with Miles Sanders. I'm still not all aboard the Ezekiel Elliott train. I am very nervous about Ezekiel Elliott with Cooper Rush potentially starting at quarterback. Damian Pierce is a guy that I bang the drum for all offseason, so I'm not jumping off the train. I just think, hey, let's just sit him down for now, and maybe it'll take a couple of weeks for him to become the guy, which is fine, right? It's not like you drafted him in the first round, so you can definitely wait. Miles Sanders would be the gut reaction, though. It was shocking to see all three running backs find the end zone, though, up against the Lions.
Imagine if something as simple as Sanders finding the end zone twice had happened last week. We would have thought he had a huge, huge ceiling this week. So that's
Yeah.
my gut reaction as well. Zeke is going to touch the ball plenty with Cooper Rush back there. They're going to try to hide Cooper Rush as much as possible. And I think Michael Carter is startable if you had another flex spot, but I'm putting Sanders ahead of Carter.
Yeah, definitely. And you obviously have to play Gabe Davis over any of these guys.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now we move on to the next tier, 5 through 14. There are obvious RB1 overall possibilities in here, particularly Leonard Fournette, who looks to have the lion's share of the backfield in Tampa Bay. Pretty excited about him going forward. And then I got to scroll all the way to the bottom there. Cordero Patterson. He looked great against New Orleans, who is typically a really strong defense. I mean, everyone in here can produce at a high level, 15 to 20 fantasy points. But Cordero was way better than expected.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this on Twitter. It is so true. Like, imagine being Cordero Patterson for years. You think, wow, I was drafted so highly. Maybe I'm not that good, right? Maybe the NFL was wrong about me and I just suck. And then, like, now you're 30 plus years old. They're giving you the ball all the time. It's like, wow, imagine what I could have done 5 years ago compared to right now. Like, I imagine he has to be thinking that, right? Like, imagine what 25-year-old Cordero could have done in this exact situation. I could have been even better, and that probably sucks for him. But at the end of the day, he is in such a good situation. Marcus Mariota looks legitimately good. Now, I don't want to overreact to one game, right? Week one doesn't mean everything. It's a long season, but Mariota looked good. Patterson looked good, and it seems like even though they added Drake London, even though this is the second year of Kyle Pitts, they still want to heavily utilize Patterson. It's like the offense runs through Cordero Patterson. So got to keep ranking him highly and got to keep starting him.
Yeah. He's in that firm RB2 tier with RB1 upside. The touchdowns aren't going to be like that every single week, but I can't believe we have Alvin Kamara and Cordero Patterson, two rankings apart. Remember, this is based on the Stokastic projections. We're not really moving it around within the tiers all that much. Up there with Josh Jacobs, who, by the way, looked better than expected last weekend as well, and you're starting him. It's so funny how these things change so quickly. I just want to highlight this. Pretty funny. Sat Zeke last week, like you guys told me to. Thank you. Appreciate you. Like Christian Kirk in the flex, that looks like it's going to be good going forward. CEH on the bench, though, oh no, too good of a spot to pass up there. I think CEH is in for a good year. It's not going to be that good every week, excuse me.
Yeah.
But AV, thanks for hanging out. We got you covered at every position all week, all year long, I should say. Anyone else you want to highlight in this mid tier? Because obviously, I think everyone is starting all these players in this tier.
Yeah, Chad is bringing up Josh Jacobs. I don't really like Josh Jacobs that much, if I'm being honest with you. The problem is Jacobs, his first two games have had the potential to be incredibly high scoring, which could mean that Jacobs could just crawl into the end zone twice, which is why you have to play him. I think Josh Jacobs is in a tough situation. I talked about this last week. I've been talking about this on my channel as well. I don't love the fact that Josh Jacobs seems like he's in a committee. But at the end of the day, when they're on the goal line, they're not handing the ball to Amir Abdullah or Zamir White. They're going to give the ball to Josh Jacobs. So if Derek Carr doesn't play like absolute dog shit in week number one, then maybe Josh Jacobs plays better. Now, again, I'm not advocating for Josh Jacobs to be someone you must start this week. But what I'm telling you is that if Carr in this offense is better, then Josh Jacobs seemingly should be pretty good.
I agree. It's just one of those things where when you look at opportunity metrics as we base the the beginning part of our statistical projections, it's going to look decent for Jacobs, but he was just running back 40 last week in expected fantasy points per game. And I realized something, Aaron, no Swift in the top 14. That's actually my mistake. It was copying it over to the show sheet. That's my mistake. He should be right there next to Aaron Jones in this tier. Swift is absolutely in this tier for me. Whether you put him at 6 or 7 or 12 or 13 is up to you based on the expected upside, but he's absolutely in tier 2 must start territory, right?
Yeah, I should have noticed that as well because Swift was not even on the sheet. So he's not even like a tier 3 guy. He's not even like running back 40. He just wasn't there. So that's obviously our fault. So I apologize. Yeah, Swift
Yeah.
is definitely a must start player. You can almost put him as RB5 or maybe even in tier 1 with the amount of volume that he gets and in a game that I think could be pretty high scoring. We saw the Jamal Williams experience. We experienced it last week. 2 touchdowns from Jamal Williams. Again, I don't think that's something you should expect every week, but it could happen. Williams is definitely the better quote unquote goal line back when compared to DeAndre Swift. So we will be seeing that. And Dan Campbell, obviously, he just wants to score. So he's going to put that big bastard in there and run the ball with him. So I think DeAndre Swift is still pretty talented, though. And again, we talked about this a lot in the offseason. He's like Alvin Kamara light. Like Alvin Kamara is the Budweiser. He's the Bud Light, you know?
Yeah. And you know what I'm realizing now? I think I figured it out. So there are there are a zillion great pages over on the Stokastic DFS side. But as you can imagine, because so many of our users on that side are professional DFS players, everything is parsed out by slate. And I think what's gone on here is that some of the prime time in the single game slates we haven't transferred over here. So players like
Gotcha.
Dalvin Cook are missing from this particular list. This is something we can easily fix for next week. We also have Dalvin Cook in this upper tier, probably with Javonte Williams, right? I probably have him above Javonte Williams still rest of
Oh,
season. And so I'm probably putting him, yeah, no, I'm putting Dalvin Cook in like that Austin Eckler, rest of season, Saquon Barkley, rest of season. So he's probably still in that S tier, that tier 1. So I want to make sure I get to people there. And then this next tier is where I put Miles Sanders, tier 3, if you want to throw that onto the board, Lepri as well. We'll get to questions here as well. Just a moment. Jacobs over Swift. No, I'm going Swift.
yeah, definitely Swift. It was just an error in our copy pasting skills.
It literally is copy paste and steal. I want to be clear that with the rankings that I'm staring at my computer screen say exactly that. We'll be better about the visuals.
Okay.
Did I see Ron the Goat made a very interesting trade for Mike Williams? Sold high in Kareem Hunt. I think our projections would agree with you there to go get Mike Williams here, especially with Keenan Allen out. I actually think DeAndre Carter is the player who runs the most similar route tree to Keenan Allen, but they just need production from Mike Williams in order to be successful long term. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. I like Mike Williams. I made a joke yesterday on Twitter. I tweeted Mike Williams on Sunday, and it was a picture of John Cena because you couldn't see him, right? He was invisible. He was awful. Mike Williams played atrocious. You just didn't see him at all. But that's not Mike Williams that you should be used to, right? Mike Williams is a guy, he's one of the only receivers in fantasy that literally has game breaking, game winning potential where he could literally score 35 points in any given matchup because of how good this offense is. So I definitely would have made that trade. I think Kareem Hunt's going to be just fine. So I'm not telling you that I'm out on Kareem Hunt, but I think that's kind of his ceiling game is what we witnessed on Sunday. Whereas Mike Williams, that was his, like, that's not even his floor game. That's like the worst game you'll ever see from that guy.
Yeah, I guess that is what the floor is,
Yeah,
technically speaking.
technically. The
But I
basement is
think
what
it
we were in.
really is quite low, like very far from his expected scoring. So this is an interesting tier. As we say, it's the great flattening. When you look at projections, all of these projections start to look the same. Unfortunately, Najee Harris has taken a dip in our projections for obvious reasons. The injury concerns, even if he's staying on the field, his expected efficiency is way lower.
Yeah.
And the offense didn't look good as a whole. It's kind of similar to like David Montgomery, where you're expecting usage, but you're not expecting efficiency from the offense or the player. Much rather start Clyde Edwards-Helaire, much rather start Antonio Gibson, especially while Robinson still is rehabbing. Chase Edmonds, he looked heavily utilized in the Dolphins offense. I think you're starting with confidence going forward. And even Rashad Penny, I think, looked better than his stats ultimately implied. Any of your favorites in this top part of tier 3?
Yeah, definitely one of my favorite players is, and they're even playing the drums for us outside or the siren or whatever. But yeah, my
That was
favorite
my
players
apartment.
it's definitely Rashad Penny. Again, I saw that game. He looked really good in the first half, and then they kind of looked away from him. The second half of that game was very lopsided towards the Broncos, even though the Broncos ultimately lost. But I think that Rashad Penny is probably going to have another fantastic week here this week. So I'd be definitely in favor of Penny. And then another guy I want to talk about in this tier is James Robinson. Now, I am fine starting James Robinson in certain situations, but I also feel as though James Robinson got incredibly lucky last week compared to what we should think about going forward. I still feel like ETN, they want to be the lead back, and I feel like James Robinson isn't fully back totally. So I think that maybe a couple of weeks from now, James Robinson will be a guy that I bang the drum for as kind of a must start running back. But right now, I'm still definitely more in favor of Travis Etienne compared to James Robinson. What do you think about that, Savoca? Do you like James Robinson better or Etienne?
Oh, what a seamless play you just had. Thanks for covering me for a moment. Actually, I have a video where I'm saying you are sitting ETN till further notice.
Okay.
Can you believe that? I'm nervous about it. This apartment bell is going to drive me bananas. I really do think James Robinson is the player you want to start. I mean, obviously, there are players in tier 2 who I like much more, but Michael Carter, James Robinson, Rex Burkhead, and Jeff Wilson with Eli Mitchell on IR all are players with volume that indicates that I can start them every single week as a clear RB3, possibly RB2.
Yeah, Jeff Wilson worries me a lot, if I'm being honest with you. I'm pretty nervous about Jeff Wilson. Now, DFS, I'm going to play him because the upside is certainly there. But in my regular fantasy lineup, like he just seems very risky because what happens if they just give the ball to Jordan Mason or Tyrion Davis Price? Like, could you see that happening? Because I don't know how much we can really take from a game that had 7 inches of rain on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, and Trey Lance is going to rush, and Debo Samuel is going to rush. There are the percentage of non-running back rushes will be highest for the San Francisco 49ers compared to all other teams. I still think he's running back 22 to 30 in your rankings every single week. He's a starting running back in the NFL for a team that is fantastic at rushing the ball and doesn't really love to pass. The touchdown upside's there too. He's stuck on this roster for a long time, while a lot of other players have day 2 draft capital and fallen off this roster. I think they really like Jeff Wilson. 10 fantasy points is your expectation. He's probably not getting you to 20, but if he's not going to kill your team if you need a high floor flex option.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. What do you think about Damian Harris, real quick? Because these New England backs are quite concerning. I mean, Ty Montgomery he's definitely out for the season, I believe. He tore his ACL. I don't remember the exact injury, so I don't want to say something wrong. But now that would appear that Ramondre would be in that pass catching role. So I'd probably have Ramondre ranked ahead of Damian Harris, but these are two guys that I'm kind of avoiding right now.
Yeah. We're talking about running backs 40 and 49 in expected fantasy points per game. The opportunity value is like between the 20s rushes. It doesn't look great. It ultimately could be red zone upside that helps them out. Damian Harris, I still think, is the better goal line bruiser, but
Agreed.
this is RB4 territory. I get why our projections are throwing him into the RB25 range, but that is, I'm hoping that I have two running backs I can start ahead of him. And if I'm in a good situation, I have three ahead of Damian Harris.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Damian Harris does have the talent to score. The problem is Patriots could not score last week. They could not really move the ball effectively at all. And this matchup up against Pittsburgh, even though TJ Watt's not going to play, like that does certainly worry me. Like I understand TJ Watt is the heartbeat of the defense, but at the end of the day, I don't know. I mean, the defense still looked pretty decent when Watt was not there. So I just think Damian Harris, and I just think the Patriots are just in a terrible situation right now. They are in a identity crisis right now with trying to have whoever's calling the plays. The guy's name I forgot. It's not Joe
Joe
Judge.
Judge
It's
and
the other
Matt
guy. It's Matt
Patricia.
Patricia. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Matt Patricia. Things are not going well. That guy needs to take the pencil out of his ear. Fucking idiot. All right, where are we going to now?
All right. Yeah. Gosh. Where do we go from here is what
Here, wait.
Patriots fans are
There
asking.
there was a question I wanted to answer, but I don't remember who asked it. But it was about will Kareem Hunt keep kind of. Oh yeah, Hunt will always steal. Oh, here's the question: will Kareem Hunt steal Chubb's points again? Yes, that's kind of basically what happens when you drafted Chubb. You kind of knew that Kareem Hunt could steal away some of the value. Now, not every week will be like last week, where Kareem Hunt scores twice, Chubb doesn't score at all. But the reason why you drafted Chubb is because he's so good at running the ball that if he scores one touchdown, even though he has virtually zero receiving upside, he could score 20 plus points. So I'm not super worried about Nick Chubb, but there's always the chance that Kareem Hunt just has a crazy game because both of them are so talented that they're obviously both starters if they're on two different teams.
We're still talking about running back 22 for Chubb and expected fantasy points, and no one is surprised that Chubb actually was above his expectation in expected fantasy points because that dude's always efficient. So what that really
Very
means
good.
to me is he got unlucky. He got his points stolen. No, I don't think Kareem Hunt will always steal Chubb's points again. Will there be weeks like this? Absolutely. It's an annoying part of fantasy football. Najee Harris or Akers at running back, you're still going Najee. As long as he's playing, you're still playing him. I
Yes.
still think the expectations, really for either player, even where you drafted him, is running back 15 to running back 10, not running back 1 overall on a weekly basis, Ken.
I agree. I'm not starting Cam Akers. I don't want anything to do with him until he really shows that he has like the burst or anything. Just not starting him.
Do I trade David Montgomery for Rex Burkhead? Have Damian Pierce on my bench as a backup. Good place to be as a solid first running back off the bench.
No. No
I think
way.
it's kind of a wash anyway. It's
Yeah,
like
I mean,
high
you can go.
opportunity on bad teams.
Yeah, at least David Montgomery, I feel like he's kind of locked in that role. Like at any point, Damian Pierce could just take over, and I think that could be soon. So, and plus Rex Burkhead, the upside just really isn't that high. Like at least David Montgomery has significantly higher upside on a big game, in my opinion. So I would not do that.
I mean, we got to call a spade a spade. Rex Burkhead played like the starting running back on an NFL team. Running back
Yes.
21 in expected fantasy points. That's where we would expect a bottom tier starting running back to get in terms of opportunity value. -3 fantasy points versus expectation. That's where we would expect a player with the talent profile and on the team of the Houston Texans. So I kind of feel like you're getting the same player. It's kind of a 1-for-1. Probably holding. Michael Carter over Devin Singletary. That's tougher. I think the game script argument and honestly the opportunity value is just better for Singletary on a game by game basis.
Yeah, I would go with Singletary. Carter's probably safer because of the receiving floor. I mean, they saw so many receptions last week up against the Ravens. I think that might just been based upon game script. But Devin Singletary, just the upside of The Bills scored a lot of points last week on Thursday. Singletary doesn't get to the end zone. But what happens if they score that many points again? They're in the red zone, and instead of these bombs to Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis and Isaiah McKenzie, what if they just simply get to the 3-yard line and just run the ball? Singletary scores 2 touchdowns. I don't think Michael Carter has 2 touchdown upside any week. So I'd go with Singletary.
Now you're thinking like a DFS pro. Somebody's been hanging out over on the Stokastic DFS channel because that's exactly how I feel about this. And this is a fundamental we talk about over there. No, seriously, Nick, it's one of those things where we forget that we can get bogged down in the stats and the yards per carry and the efficiency, but touchdowns and the upside of outscoring your projection is what truly wins you your fantasy weeks against your opponents. And I do think that that is one of the things that we've learned over the years and how we can apply that to fantasy football. And it's something that I think you can check out over at the Stokastic DFS side as well. Over on stokastic.com, we have some great offerings. If you're just dipping your toes in the water of the DFS pool, if you will, we, of course, have some of the most professional tools to help professional players in our premium suite of tools over at stokastic.com. But we've taken that same care and brought it over to people who are building, say, 5-10 lineups per week. We've got the lineup generator now for the main slates and for showdown slates. We've got player compare tools, so you can easily go back and forth between 1-versus-1 or 2-versus-2 kinds of matchups. And it can start to get you involved, especially if you start looking at our premium tool on what teams are most likely to score the most, what teams are likely to be the most stacks. And you start to realize that teams that have the highest touchdown upside on a per drive basis are the ones we're consistently going towards. If you want to check out all that stuff, absolutely free. We've got a 3-day free trial going on right now. It's a really great way to test out absolutely everything we've got. There's no withholding, no reservations about stokastic.com. You get the whole premium suite except for Fantasy Cruncher because we don't own that. We can't add that on. But everything from the top stacks tool to the top projections to the boom bust tool, which gives you leverage scores to tell you how players are in a GPPs, absolutely free for 3 days. Click the link in the video description below and we'll help you get started over there today. And if you have any questions, just let us know in chat or in the comments. We can get you set up with whoever you need to help as well. Join the community over on Stokastic. Anything you want to highlight about tier 3 before we move on to the iffy starts, tier 4?
Yeah, I want to talk real quick about Antonio Gibson. Now, I was really off of Gibson all off season. I think correctly, probably because of Brian Robinson. And then what happens. It is what it is. But now Gibson is in a very good situation, so I'm going to continue to play Gibson, and potentially he could be a top 5 running back next week. I mean, the amount of receptions he saw seems like they completely phased out J.D. McKissick. So that's kind of how I feel on Antonio Gibson. I just really like him now.
The opportunity's there, period. And kind of end of story. He's a top 20 running back for me going forward. Curtis Samuel's the one I'm concerned about, not even J.D. McKissick.
Yeah, I mean, if Gibson went down again, knock on wood, we're not rooting for injuries, then we could see Curtis Samuel really just be like Cordell Patterson, I would think, right?
Yeah, probably closer there. Yep. I'm sorry, guys. I'm answering some of the questions in the tiers. I'll just repeat it again. One of the things that happened as we brought over the Stokastic projections and brought them over to rankings is because FS based, they are based mostly on slate based projections. And I realized some of the single games players got left out here. So Derrick Henry is in top of tier 2. We have Swift in tier 2. We have Dalvin Cook in tier 1, and we'll make sure we get this transferred over to the visuals better next time. But they're definitely in the place where you would say, unless I have absolute superstars like Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, I'm starting those players. They're kind of not in the questionable status at all yet. Although Derrick Henry, I think that was a floor game for him as well. Do you have any thoughts about him going forward? Are you concerned about him at all?
You're talking about Derrick Henry, right?
Derrick Henry, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, I would not be concerned at all. And again, look, he has one down game. Like, come on, no one should overreact and panic off of one game that wasn't super good when we know the guy is the heartbeat of the offense. He's the main player on that team. They're going to keep feeding him the ball. He could score like 30 points this week. Wouldn't surprise me. So don't fade away from Derrick Henry and don't trade away Derrick Henry or something because he has one bad game. It's not like he's washed all of a
I
sudden.
saw it. I was in a league where it happened. I saw Derrick Henry get traded. It's a super flex league, so the gist of the trade was Derrick Henry for Jalen Hurts. There was a whole lot of other stuff around it. I'm shocked that Derrick Henry got moved.
Yeah.
Overreaction, right?
Yeah, don't overreact. And then James Conner is also a guy that would be a tier 2 running back as well.
Actually, we've got him in the ranks. Do you have tier 4 ready to go?
I do have tier 4, but not a nice actual picture. It's just
All right,
a screenshot.
we can throw up the screen share. That's no worries. But we have him right at the edge here, running back 29, below Kareem Hunt, below Ezekiel Elliott, right next to Damian Harris, right next to Melvin Gordon, and J.K. Dobbins and Jamal Williams. I'm shocked by where our projections have him. I probably, just based on gut, I'm ranking him a little higher than that. But hey, this is what we're showing you the projections for. This is what the numbers say heading into the weekend.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe with that, to be honest with you. I would go with James Conner significantly higher than that. The Cardinals really want to give him the ball. That was pretty clear last week. And I think that, yet again, they're going to use him pretty heavily. Seems like they have, Benjamin, they have these other players, but James Conner is the clear guy on this team. So I definitely have him ranked higher than this.
Yeah, I'm looking at Fantasy Pros, and as of yesterday, he was running back 15. So this is significantly below expert consensus rankings. I might just split the difference. If our stats say 29 and Fantasy Pros or other expert consensus rankings platforms says 15, I might just split the difference. Just say, 20, 21. Yeah. Well, this is a take. I mean, this has been thrown around before, especially when he gets nicked up. He's not an efficient per play running back. If he falls in the end zone, he's good to go. But the passing opportunity was the thing that we were kind of into this year, where he could get the Chase Edmonds expected fantasy points, 12 expected fantasy points per game. Not so successful in week 1. I still think there's some upside for him. You think J.K. Dobbins plays this week?
Do I think J.K. Dobbins plays? No. I don't think. Why would they risk it? I mean, we just saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for some reason, think Chris Godwin was good to go. And then Chris Godwin gets hurt again. Don't throw J.K. Dobbins out like this. Just wait. Just wait a couple of games. Kenyon Drake worries me. Kenyon Drake, I somewhat talked myself into fat Mike Davis last week and then went away. Or I went for him. I was like, you know what? YOLO. He's in a good spot. Kenyon Drake just showed up. And then Kenyon Drake is the guy. It made no sense to me. But yeah, I'd be staying pretty clear away from Dobbins, Kenyon Drake, Mike Davis, all those guys. The Dolphins' run defense also looked better last week. It was honestly shocking because the Dolphins' run D normally just splits like the Red Sea, and guys just run right through it. But that did not happen last week.
The Dolphins actually looked like a competent defense, 4th in the NFL in points per play. 1 week sample size, but 4th best in the NFL in points allowed per play. Shocking. That's shocking. Let's talk about the bottom part of this tier. Breece Hall. If Joe Flacco is just going to go full Ryan Fitzpatrick and air the ball out, Breece Hall is going to get a lot of dump off passes here because the Jets are going to be in a lot of negative game scripts. I actually like him quite a bit here. More so, I cannot believe I'm saying it, than Travis Etienne, because the upside with Flacco as his quarterback in the negative game scripts actually looks higher for Hall than Etienne. That might be a hot take.
That's a hot take. I think Etienne is still fine. I don't know. I just feel like those James Robinson 2 touchdowns were more fluke than anything, in my opinion. I think James Robinson's good, but
he
I
got
think
more
Etienne,
reps per snap.
That's true.
On a per touch basis, he was more efficient, so it wasn't just about the touchdowns.
Okay. All right, but I still don't. I just can't buy into a running back where they want to give it to. I'm talking about Breece Hall now. Why do they want to give the ball to Michael Carter so much? Breece Hall is clearly better. So I think we're going to deal with this for the first couple of weeks of the season where Breece Hall is kind of just, you have to bench him in most situations.
Heart and soul of the team, Michael Carter. Isn't that what they said? Heart and soul of the team.
The heartbeat of the
Greg Jennings,
offense.
Michael Carter.
The
Uh,
hardest hitting safety in the NFL, though.
I don't know, man. Take the first round draft capital out of it. Are you starting a player who gets 8 opportunities per game on the Jaguars?
No, but it's
That's what
just
Travis
because,
Etienne did last week.
yeah, of course. But again, I think that I'm not overreacting to week 1 is kind of just my standpoint. I don't want to go crazy. Look, I didn't like the ETN that much once we learned James Robinson was coming back. So I was already someone who was pretty worried about exactly what happened in week 1. But again, I'm not overreacting a crazy amount. I'm still playing ETN. If he doesn't do good this week, though, this is when you have to go ahead and look away, in my opinion. Like, if he plays bad this week, if Robinson's the guy, then it's like, okay, I'm done with ETN. I'm going to keep playing Robinson. That's kind of just how I think about it.
Okay, so it's yellow flag, not red flag. That's
Yeah,
fair. That's right.
we're approaching the red flag. We're approaching it being very bad.
I agree with that. Let's throw some tier 5 here. Once we get to tier 5, guys, you're talking about deeper leagues, multiple flex leagues or 16 teamers. And then tier 6 is sort of like the line of demarcation of why are we starting people? Why are we doing this here? I love Stevenson. Kunta Kint says, I love Stevenson going forward. Ty Monty is on IR. I still think you're talking about running back 4 type value where he could pop to running back 2 with a couple touchdowns, not running back 12, like running back 12 or better in terms of positional ranking. I think that's way out of the range of outcomes. Talk about something that grinds my gears. This players who are probably missing multiple weeks, but they're not sure, having to go back and forth from the IR slot. I wish there was something we could turn off for that. There is an advantage. You can get your waiver wire picks early while they're still marked out, and they should still go through. Anybody in tier 5 or 6 that look like, okay, I'll give a shot on them.
Yeah, something I want to mention real quick. The fact that the Cowboys aren't putting Dak Prescott on the IR is incredibly annoying for leagues that only allow you to put them on the IR once they're actually on the IR. There is virtually 0% chance that Dak plays in the next 4 games. So I don't know why they're doing that personally. But a name that really kind of sticks out to me is definitely going to be Mr. Tony Pollard, because I think that Tony Pollard right now is the more talented back than Zeke. The issue is the team just wants to keep using Zeke, which is a lot of what I talked about in the offseason, that Jerry Jones just views Zeke in such a strong way that they're just going to keep giving the ball to Zeke. Same with Mike McCarthy. They both believe the exact same thing. So Zeke's still going to be getting the run, even if he doesn't look good. But I also don't want to overreact to that game because that game was awful for the team. I understand that it's not going to get much better with Cooper Rush, but that was just a very bad game for the running backs, for the whole team, basically. They all suck.
Well, how about this for one way to play narrative street here? It's always a little dangerous to go down narrative street because we don't know. But what if it is a bunch of dump offs? It's Zeke Elliott in the backfield. It's a dump off to Dalton Schultz or Tony Pollard. And the real people who feel the hurt of Dak Prescott not being there are CeeDee Lamb and the rest of the wide receivers. I think CeeDee Lamb is the one I'm most concerned about. I think there will be plenty of short area passes to Tony Pollard. Do I feel comfortable starting him with Cooper Rush as his quarterback? Absolutely not. But at the same time, I see a way where this works, especially in a full point PPR league. So I think that's worth bringing up. JD McKissick kind of falls into that category as well. I think there will be games where Washington is further behind and has to dump it off, whether that's this week against Detroit. That's up for you to decide. And it's sad to say, but Cam Akers is down here in the I'm really not sure you want to start him at all territory, nearly outside the top 40.
Yeah. I got a question. Why do we have Taysom Hill as a running back?
That is hilarious because that's what he plays if you think about what he actually does, but that's not right at all.
He's a
I
tight
almost
end.
wonder if that's from our their copy over from the tight end position. How dare we? We're truly professional operation here. And there also are some players missing from like the primetime slate. Like I'm noticing we don't have Alexander Madison as well on here. So we'll make
Hilliard.
sure that the process of getting bringing over the ranks and projections to the tiers is straightened out because there were some players. And please, guys, go keep asking in chat about players like Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Swift. They are definitely not in these tiers. They're way above there. And so we'll make sure we'll tell you guys where they are. We just got a few minutes remaining here. Is there anybody in tier 6 who you're looking at right now and you say, 2 weeks from now, we're going to want this player? I see one player. Ty Montgomery, obviously, this is before he was placed on IR. We had him projected in our stats. He won't be there by week's end. I'm looking at Khalil Herbert and saying
Yep.
this guy could be a top 24 running back and just outplay David Montgomery by the time we hit week 5.
Yeah, he would have been my answer as well. He was one of the guys that I talked about in my waiver wire video. I think Khalil Herbert is pretty talented. Now, again, I don't want to overreact to a game in 6 inches of rain where the fucking field looked like a Van Gogh painting because there were all these like squiggly lines. Did you see that on the game? Like the 10-yard line is like
Right.
doing the wave basically. The sideline was wavy. It was crazy to see. But again, I don't want to crazily overreact to that. But look, David Montgomery just might not be the guy for much longer. So if you have Montgomery, you certainly should have Khalil Herbert, in my opinion, because there is a chance that 2, 3, 4 weeks from now is the fact that Khalil Herbert could be the guy.
He looked better on a per touch basis. I'm not a huge
Agreed.
watch the game film guy, but I realized it was a gross game environment. The weather's disgusting, but he just looked better on that same ugly field than David Montgomery to be. We have a few questions here to close it out. Just a few minutes left. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us on this Wednesday morning, enjoying your coffee or your bagel, maybe getting started at work and hanging out, talking some fantasy football. Really appreciate you guys hanging. Where is this? Would you start Bateman or Kareem Hunt in the flex full PPR?
All right. So the thing with Bateman is that there's potential that he goes one-on-one with Xavier Howard, which would very much scare me. I don't think X would just necessarily shadow him, though. So I'm going to still go with Bateman. But Hunt is safer, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Bateman, if you need 15 to 20 points full PPR, you need that shot at the upside. Bateman, if you're looking for 10 fantasy points to 15, Hunt is a safer option. And as we saw, he can fall into the end zone a couple times too. Not a bad player by any stretch. I like them a lot. Where do we have Derrick Henry ranked? Somebody asked. I think I have him around running back 8 right now, running back 7.
Yeah.
Right around Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley. And I have Austin Eckler a little bit higher in my personal projections than the Stokastic projections.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Don't just overreact to one game and move Henry down. I mean, Henry did get hit sticked like Madden 2004 by that defensive player on the Giants, but that's not the normal for Derrick Henry.
Agreed. Montgomery, David Montgomery, Darrell Henderson, Cordero Patterson, Zeke need 2 half PPR. You're starting Cordero, and I think you're starting Darrell. You're starting the players with Darrell, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Zeke would be 3rd for me.
Yeah, it's funny how these dead zone running backs aren't good. What a shocker, right? Henderson and Patterson are the guys.
All right. When do you all stream like this every morning? That is a
10 a.m.
perfect question to close things out for today. We stream Tuesday through Friday at 10 a.m. Then we also have Thursday night and Sunday morning, the notorious fantasy live stream, answering literally as many questions as he can right before Thursday night football and again before the main slate at noon Eastern time as well. We go position by position, and then on Friday we just answer your questions, flex Q&A, start and sit advice. Simple as that. We're getting you ready to dominate every single league you're in, and we're giving you some cool promo codes from around the industry and to our Stokastic DFS product, which again is taking a new and improved look at helping players just get started in the DFS world, just like they've helped many professional DFS players over the year as well. Check the video link in the description below. We didn't talk about them today, but you see the banner on the bottom of your screen. Underdog Fantasy has a cool resurrection tournament. Did you see this? Week 6 to week 17 tournament. So best ball season is certainly not over. First match deposit bonus up to $100 with promo code Stokastic. This is a whole lot of fun, man. Going through these players every single week. We will get the visuals better so that we can make sure that we have every single player listed from our projections. That's important. Nick's important as well. Make sure you follow him at Notorious FNTSY. Any final words for the people before we head out of here?
Yeah, if we didn't get to your questions in the chat today, there's a lot of questions. It's kind of hard in the limited time frame we have to talk about everything. Just leave them in the comment section after this, and I'll go in and try and answer them. If you leave a comment on the Stokastic Fantasy Football channel or on the Notorious Fantasy channel, I basically try to answer as many as possible. Now, if you ask on Sunday, I'm probably live streaming, so you're probably not going to get an answer at like 11 or 12. But if you ask prior to that, I normally try to go in there and answer. So make sure you ask the questions in there. And again, we will be live tomorrow. Tomorrow is the wide receiver one. And then the next day we have the
Q&A.
Q&A.
Yeah.
Q&A. My bad. My brain farted right there, but it is what it is. Thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate everyone. Make sure you hit the like button on the way out too. It helps us out a ton. And thank you guys for watching. I mean, 200 plus people. I think this is the best stream we've had in terms of numbers so far off the top of my head. So I really appreciate all you guys. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, we love doing this for you guys. Let's win some fantasy leagues this year. We'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern, for the wide receiver breakdown. He's Nick at Notorious FNTSY. I'm Matt at Draftaholic on Twitter for the Stokastic Fantasy Football channel. We will see you guys later.